Hi everyone, welcome to Photoshop Lab 5. Today you're going to need these 4 images. This is Stefania Ferrario. She is a plus-size Australian fashion model. Her document is a Photoshop document, a PSD. The other 3 documents are either PNGs or JPEGs. We have water, ink wash, and thundercloud. Today we're going to introduce you to effects. We're going to practice again with a few filters and layer masks. We'll introduce just a few more blending modes. You've probably been experimenting with those and finding how much fun they are. And then we'll do a very brief introduction into the text tool. All right, when you're ready. So here is the image that we're going to work within. This is our model, Stefania. What we are going to do is take this photo from being black and white inside like a photo shoot gallery. We're going to remove the background. We're going to add some kind of textural elements, make it feel much more like a graphic advertisement spread, and then add her name as text to the side of the image. All right, we're going to choose some colors and kind of keep like a related color palette going, making sure that our model is the most important, the most warm or saturated part of our image, and then our text to be secondary, and then keep our background interesting but non-competitive. All right, because I love you, I have drawn a path for you around Stefania. All right, before we use the path to delete the background, I just would love you to appreciate it for a second and to always try to build paths that have nice smooth curves, have good tight corners, and stay slightly within your subject so that you can cut out your background without having to erase any additional pixels or have any pixels kind of haloing around. All right, so this is always your goal with paths. Even though this path has a lot of anchor points, it still is very clean and straightforward. All right, with this path loaded as a selection by clicking on this small ring of marching ants here, let's go to our layer and let's select the inverse, so Command-Shift-I. And if you're on a PC, that was Control-Shift-I, and then we'll hit delete. We're going to delete that background out. Or we can deselect the model now, Command-D. And this image is going to need some extra space here to the left for the text. So instead of using our crop tool to add it, let's go through our canvas size menu. So you're going to come up here to image and canvas size. And we're going to make it a total of a square. So this is 933 pixels high, which means we're going to make it 933 pixels wide. At this point, if we hit enter, it would add an equal amount of pixels to either side. If we want it to add to a particular side, we need to direct it using this little grid here. If I place my center here on the right, it's going to add any space to the left, and that's exactly what I want. All right, so that's my anchor. I'm going to place it on the right so that it adds space to the left. Then hit OK. Great. All right, let's add in a color of a background. We will use our rectangle tool to do this. We've not used this before, but this is a tool that allows us to draw a colored rectangle, and it will just become its own layer. Where it says fill up here, I would like you to click and get your color picker from that little drop-down menu. And we're going to select a very neutral gray, but not a colorless gray, a neutral gray, so something that's got a little bit of color information in it, like a red. And hit OK before just clicking and dragging over our canvas to get a rectangle of that color. Now, let's say you don't love the color that you chose now that you see a really big swatch of it, because earlier it was just a teeny tiny little swatch. You can always double click on the color of the rectangle here in your layer palette now and adjust that. Personally, I think it needs to be a little less red, a little more orange. That's better. A little more neutral. All right, so I promised you that we were going to add some color into the photograph of our model. We are not going to colorize it to make it look like actual skin tone, hair tone, and clothing. That would take a very long time and way more paths than I guarantee you want to build. So we're going to use a couple of more rectangles, colored rectangles and masks to mask in some colors with some blending modes. All right. The first thing I want you to do is, let's go ahead and deselect the rectangle layer. With our rectangle tool, let's start by creating a rectangle that is a really warm goldenrod color. So it's not really yellow and it's not really orange just yet. It's just like a nice goldenrod. You hit OK. We're going to draw a rectangle that covers our canvas. Now we only want this to affect the pixels on our model layer. So on the model layer, go ahead and select that layer. Recall that we can either get a selection and it will suck into wherever there are actually pixels, or you can, let's see, I'm going to Command D out of this, or you can load that path again as a selection. Either way, you should be able to get that selection, and then on your rectangle layer, add a layer mask, and what it should do is should hide everything outside of the selection. Perfect. Everything outside the selection is hidden, that's why it's black in the mask. And everything inside the selection, which is white in the mask, is still showing. So we just have the yellow, the goldenrod yellow inside the selection. We're going to change this blending mode from normal to color dodge. We want this to kind of affect a lot of the light areas. The model, I'm going to change that opacity down. We don't want it to be quite that strong. All right, so now it's no longer a black and white photo because we have a little bit of color information. We're going to do a second bit of color information that should affect our shadows quite a bit more. So again, let's get your rectangle tool. And this time, let's make sure that one's deselected. This time, we're going to choose a really hot, warm pink. By warm pink, I mean closer to red than to purple. Hot, warm pink. Okay. We'll draw that rectangle again. And do the same thing. We're going to make a selection using Stefania's path, and then use a layer mask, make sure that the pink rectangle is the layer they have selected. I'll change this blending mode from normal to lighten. Now it's going to make this quite a bit hotter pink than we're going to ultimately need. We're going to have it, we do want it to be a little bit darker and have more contrast, so we'll change the opacity down until there's a nice dark color in her hair. I'm going to change the order of these two layers so I don't get that funny pixelization that's happening up here. Sometimes that can be solved by the order of your layers, which one's affecting first or second. Pull that down just a little bit more, keep that nice warm raspberry red but not hot, hot pink anymore. Awesome. All right, next we're going to bring some textural elements into the background, but we're going to keep them cooler colors than Stefania, but we still want them to complement the colors so that she pops off the background, she feels the most important. Let's get our ink wash PNG and bring it into our image. Now this is a much larger image. You can see it's already like 3,600 pixels wide, whereas Stefania is only 933 pixels, so we're going to have to bring it in and then transform it right away. But let's just get that done. All right, Command T. Oh, I'm going to have to back up. There it is. And then we'll bring that in and hit Enter. All right, we'll bring that behind Stefania because we're going to use it as kind of a supporting graphic element. And let's transform it to kind of stay on the upper half of Stefania's body, and we'll rotate it to kind of add some action line. I don't want it to extend above the top of her head or below her arms. I kind of want to make sure that we keep a lot of the focus, because this is going to be very textural. We want to keep the focus here. What's important in viewing humans as usually heads and hands. They have the most gesture, the most language. So once you have that there, let's colorize this layer. We don't want it to be black. We're going to want it to be, again, like a complementary color to Stephania. So we'll come up here to our adjustments. We're going to go to hue and saturation because we're going to use a fun little trick called colorize. We're going to have to add, whoops, a lot of lightness into it so that's not black anymore. We do want a kind of army olive green. Well, that's dark enough to kind of support Stephania in front of it, but like a nice olive army green. It's a little more yellow than it is blue. And so it's a little bit related to some of the yellows that are happening, but it is complementary to the raspberry pink. Once you've done adjusting that lightness and that saturation and that hue, go ahead and hit OK. And then we are going to add in some, so this is textural in that the shape itself has texture, but I want the inside of it to have texture as well. So that's why we're going to bring in our water JPEG. If you need to unlock that layer before you use your move tool to drag it into your file, that's fine. This one also will need to be resized. I'll go ahead and generally place it here behind the model and hit enter. Now we're going to use this shape to mask this layer, kind of like we used Stephania's shape to mask these two rectangles. So let's go ahead and make sure you have layer 1 selected. We can use our quick selection tool to grab all actual pixels. Then we'll switch to layer 2 and use that selection shape to create a mask. Beautiful. Now I don't want it to end up just blue because why did I go through all the trouble for it to be green? So we will change the blending mode and the opacity here in a moment. But now that we have the mask, if I wanted to transform my image, my photograph, if I hit Command T right now, I have a problem. I'm moving my entire layer. I don't want that. I want to just be able to move the water image behind the mask. So I'm going to hit Control Z. I'm going to escape out of this. And instead, I'm going to need to unlink my layer from my mask. The mask will still apply, but now with those unlinked, I can hit Command T and I can move my image inside my mask. All right. Now that I can move that, I'm going to rotate it and resize it and place it in a way that I feel attracts attention to the face without distracting, without running into the face. So like these really bright areas interrupt the face. I'm going to kind of find somewhere that maybe frames the model's face really well. Perfect. You don't have to find the same one that I did, but go ahead and just keep that in mind that you don't want a really distracting shape to happen at the same time or in the same place as kind of your more important gestural information. Maybe I don't want it to follow it too closely. Oh, and I see I've run out of some of my photograph here, so I'm going to have to enlarge it. All right, when you're done, you're going to hit enter, and we will change our opacity down so that it doesn't affect so strong. And then we're also going to change this from normal to something called linear light. It's going to kind of push the contrast between the lights and the darks really strong. We're still going to keep the opacity low so that we get texture without getting high contrast distraction. Again, we want to support the model. We don't want to distract from the model. We're adding interest without distracting from it. All right, next we're going to use another organic photograph to kind of add texture to the background. That's where that thundercloud image is going to come in. We're not going to unfortunately see a lot of the thundercloud recognizably. we're using it for its texture. So let's collect that thundercloud image and bring it into our Photoshop document. Let's bring this all the way to almost the back. And we're going to add a filter to this image. And we're actually going to use the filter called Color Halftone. So with the layer selected, let's come up here to Filter and then Pixelate and Color Halftone. I would like my max radius to maybe be about 6 pixels. So that's the size of the circle that make up the halftone. Before I hit OK. Now this is going to look really scary for a second. This is going to look very distracting. This is going to take away all eyes from the model. So we are going to change the opacity. We want this to be texture without distraction. All right, we're going to move, let's see, let's change this from normal to multiply so it's adding to that rectangle of kind of grayish color behind it. I want you to aim to drag your image so that you've got some change of texture right here behind the model. We are going to mask this area out a little bit so that we have room for the text without interruption. So let's see, I might be running out of image soon. Yeah, I've run out of image. No, I kind of like this little bit of light and dark that's happening here. And it doesn't bother me that my image runs out because we're going to mask right there anyways. Once you've settled on a placement for your image, let's add a layer mask to this. Now we're not adding a layer mask with a shape this time, like we had with our previous layer mask. We're just adding one because we're going to brush in the masked area. So once you've clicked on layer mask with that thundercloud image attached, you'll notice that your foreground and background color changed to black and white. That's because, like always, masks communicate in black and white. White is what shows, black is what's hidden. So we're going to use our black. We're going to load a brush. Make sure you're using like a soft round brush. And we are going to just get rid of a little bit of that edge so that when text appears over here, the text doesn't compete with that texture as well. I might even brush one more time with a really soft, transparent, just to make that a little more gradual. You can see how gradual it's happening here in my mask. All right. Our model is standing out by virtue of being the warmer colors, but I think she could use a little more help popping off against the background that we've created. The texture is very nice, but it is starting to kind of collide with her. So we're going to add what are called effects to that photograph layer. So on our models layer, we come down here next to where our layer mask is, we see this little FX. And if we click on this, we get a little drop-down menu with some options. Now there's a lot of really fun things to play with. I hope you do play with them someday. But today we're going to use two of them. We're going to use outer glow and drop shadow. Let's start with outer glow. Oh my. Okay, so depending on the last time you ever used outer glow, or if you've ever used outer glow before, this will be preset to something. I do not want to use red. I want this glow to feel darker and more neutral than the model. So on the color picker, I'm just going to choose a dark neutral brown. Oh, that's better already. You see how that's happening. Your drop shadow will also have a blending mode. So this isn't the layers blending mode. This is just for the effect. So you're not going to make the photograph multiply and everything. Once you have the blending mode selected, you can adjust how strong the opacity is. I'm going to keep it a little bit softer. And we're going to ignore noise for now, but that does add in noise, a little pixelation. What I want you to kind of play with and find useful is the spread, how quickly that outer glow occurs, and then the size, how far away from the pixels, it occurs as well. So outside of your pixel information of the photograph, how big is this outer glow, and then how quickly does it turn from opaque to transparent. If we go ahead and select and deselect the preview box, we can kind of see what that's already doing for our image, for our graphic. She's already standing out quite a bit stronger against it. Adding that nice contrast, that dark shadow behind especially lighter areas like in her face and hands, helps her stand out a little bit. I'm going to take that opacity down just a little bit more because it's a little strong. And remember, we're going to use two effects, so we're going to use outer glow and drop shadow. So if this one's a little weak, the other one can kind of make up for it a little bit. All right, so hit OK when you're done with those options. And then you notice that on your layer, you have this little FX icon added. If we can collapse or reveal that, you can toggle the viewability of these effects as well from your layers. Let's add another one. Let's add that drop shadow. All right, in drop shadow, oh my goodness, this color. Drop shadow is very similar, except for instead of going in equal distance around the model in every direction, the drop shadow, I want to make this really dramatic for a second. The drop shadow has a direction that the light is casting the shadow from. All right, I would like most of the shadow to occur on the front of the model's body because that is the more visually important part of the photograph. I do not want it to be this strong. That's definitely a little garish. Now, because it's multiply, it is interacting with the outer glow as well. So they're both playing off of each other to become that nice strong silhouette. So I can keep it a little bit transparent and it'll still work pretty hard because it is compounded with my outer glow. All right, so you're going to change your color to be something that feels like it fits within the color scheme. You're going to change your opacity. You're going to make sure that that angle is kind of casting it down and to the left. And then you can adjust that distance, size, the spread to get a nice effect along the front of the model. When you're finished, you can always toggle preview to see how that affects your image, and then hit OK to apply it. You can always delete an effect later if you don't like it. You can always turn it off in case you're just not wondering if you want to keep it forever. That's the wonderful thing about them, is they're still very malleable and they haven't changed anything about your photograph. They've just added effects to the layer. Okay, the last thing we're going to do is we're going to add text. We're going to add the text Stefania Ferrario, the name of our model, and we're going to rotate it to fit here vertically. All right, so this could feel like a small advertisement spread. First, we're going to have to click and drag with our text tool. That's hotkey T. All right, so it's hotkey T. It says text right here. All right. Once you have a text box, you can change the size of your font. So if it came in really large and you can't see the text, that's a problem. If it came in really small and you're going to need something larger to fill up the space, that's fine. Go ahead and choose from this drop-down menu on the top of Photoshop your text font. Go ahead and use something with a serif, something nice and classy. And in a font that will fit all of your text. Let's see, so I could stand to make this a little bigger. Let's try 30. Oh, do I dare squish it to 31? Haha. All right, I didn't run out of space. I noticed that our text is changing color. Well, depending on which where your cursor was last, your text layer will have appeared just above that. So my text layer is being affected by the pink and the yellow. That's kind of fun. Now, if you built your text layer above, that won't be happening. Pause if you need to make sure that you can get the text on there the right size. When you're done, make sure that the text is the very topmost layer. And then we're going to transform our text layer, Command T on a Mac, Control T on a PC, and we'll rotate this text. If I hold down Shift while I rotate, it will snap to nice little geometric increments. And we're going to place this right here along our margin. When you're done with your transformation, you go ahead and hit Enter. Now I don't like it being black text because now it is more attention grabbing than the model. We would like this to blend in and support the photograph at all times. So this black contrasts very strong with this neutral background. And we don't see it elsewhere. This black is going to steal the show. So we are going to come to our effects on our text layer. Yes, you can use effects on text layers. And we are going to select Gradient Overlay. All right, now in Gradient Overlay, mine remembered from the last time that I gave this lecture. Yours probably looks like this. It probably looks like black and white. If you've never used this tool before, it should probably auto fill with a default black to white gradient. So let's talk about how to change that and what it looks like in here. Of course I canceled out, that's funny. By double clicking either of your sliders here along the bottom, you can get to the color picker. The color picker allows you to choose a color for the gradient. Now instead of choosing inside this nice little hue saturation value range, I'm going to actually select it straight from my image. All right, I want this really dark red. And I want this really neutral gold. All right, so by doing that, by eyedropping out of my image directly, I can make sure that my colors are united and cohesive in an image. Instead of doing the green, because that is my complementary color, I want to do another warm color so that my model is my primary visual, and then my text is my secondary, and everything else just supports them there. All right. So once you've selected those couple of colors, you'll notice you can keep, you can decide the midpoint between these two. So you can have your gradient last longer on the gold side than the red side by changing this very small diamond. If you click like I did right here and accidentally added an extra slider, you can just pull it off by pulling downward. All right, I want to keep this a little more red than gold. So my middle point, oh my goodness, I've done it again. So my middle point is going to be a little bit more close to the gold. And I might even change my red to be not quite my darkest red, a little bit lighter before I hit OK. All right, now the angle of your gradient, right now it should be auto be at 90 degrees, so it's going straight down. If you wanted that gradient, say, to occur at another angle, this is how you would change it. However, for the purposes of this image, we do want to keep it at 90. Just know that that's how you change it later. All right, then hit OK. Now this is it. This would be the graphic that you would then present. Now, we came a long way. If we brought, if we copied this right here, let's go ahead and copy your model, bring it to the front, and we will turn off the effects. We're just going to do a little quick comparison between kind of where we've started and where we've been. Let's group all of our previous layers and see where we started from. This is where we started. This is where we ended. So with a lot of adjustments, a lot of filters, using other photographs for their texture, for their maybe organic lights and darks, their contrast range, you can get a lot done in a graphic design setting with only one photograph that you want to keep original. All right, and that's just kind of the lesson for today. I hope you feel very creative and that you've got ideas for your own projects. Remember to save Photoshop documents with all the layers included, and I will see you in Photoshop Lab 6.